Well, hey there, everyone. Happy Monday. Alyssa Orange alongside Mike Irwin for another edition of Ask Mike. Now
Too many questions. I can't keep up with all
a lot of questions this week.
It seems like my head is spinning.
You would assume that, though, just because basketball's ending and everyone just has a million questions about what's next. So I'm sure we've got a lot of basketball questions in here, as well as some baseball questions as well. So we'll go ahead and get started and kind of go through these. Our first question is from Pork Soda, who says, assuming J. Will, Devo, and Note start next year, who do you see filling the other two starting positions?
Okay, right off the bat, I'm not going to assume anything about anybody starting because the way Coach Musselman works this transfer portal, I mean, you just don't know. Let's start with J.D. Note. Now, he was the backup point guard, sixth man of the year, guy coming off the bench, so you're going to assume he's going to be the starting point guard? Well, here's the problem right off the bat. They're after Missouri's point guard, Xavier Pinson. He scored 46 points on Arkansas in 2 games, averaged over 13. He's good. If he comes, I think he's the starting point guard, and you just let Note come back off the bench again as the backup point guard. You got K.K. Robinson, he can be a point guard, and then apparently if Pinson doesn't come, there's a guy from Miami that averaged 15 points a game that was injured last year and sat out, and he's transferring, and so they're looking at him too. So I think there's going to be a new starting point guard to replace Jalen Tate. So I'm not going to assume anything about Note. Devo, well, you would assume Devo, the kind of year he is, he's an off guard, a shooting guard. He can do a lot of stuff, maybe even play a little point. I think he'll be the starter, but this guy, Au'Diese Toney
from Pitt.
I mean, he can play any one of a number of positions, and he's like a 15-point per game guy. So you may see him in there starting. I don't know. Or maybe he comes off the bench. There's just all these moving parts. And then you've got Kamani Johnson, who is the transfer from Little Rock, who sat out this year. And Musselman said about him the other day, he's so physical in practice, I've told him, hey, dude, back off. He's afraid he's going to hurt some of the current guys. So he looks like the Justin Smith replacement at power forward. And I've said all along that Jalen Williams needs that. He needs that power forward guy in there with him. So that looks like a good combination. That looks like 2 guys that would start. But I can't say for sure.
Yeah.
I just think when you start trying to say who's going to start on this team next year, because of the way he recruits and brings guys in, we don't know.
And we also just don't know how people are going to develop. I mean, you look at Devo Davis, and he wasn't starting at the beginning of the year, and then he became one of their most valuable players by the end of the year. So just because of how it starts doesn't mean it's going to end that way.
I think it's safe to say they're going to have a lot more depth, and the one difference next year is that they had 1 returning starter. This year they got a bunch that could be. They returned some real key elements of that NCAA tournament run, and that's going to be the big difference. Is you don't go into the NCAA tournament, and I'm assuming they'll make it, with 1 guy that's been in it before. I think that really helps when you have guys with that kind of experience coming back.
Okay, next question. Slobber Hog or Slobber Slob.
Yeah, Slobber Slob.
Sorry, my bad. I thought Mateo Soli had an incredible, promising freshman season, then really didn't see him much this past year. Is he okay?
You know, some of that might have been the change in coaching staff, but he had that big wrap on his hand.
A club for most of the season.
I don't know how you tackle somebody like that. So I'm sure it limited him somewhat. He hasn't been mentioned a lot in these 2 preseason scrimmages. I wouldn't make a lot out of that. Here's the thing about the D line. And there's some talk that he also might be an outside linebacker or whatever. They have a stated goal of rotating in and out more players this next fall so they don't have guys running out of gas, because what we do know is they really want a pass rush. They want to go after opposing quarterbacks, which in my opinion is what you have to do in the SEC. But if you're going to put constant pressure on opposing quarterbacks, you've got to be able to rotate guys in and out. So I think Soli's going to play one way or the other. I think a lot of guys are going to play.
All right. Rob's 4516 wants to know, how do you think the offensive line is looking so far? How much of a factor will the added weight, bulk, or muscle be?
Well, you can see a difference. They're bigger. And in the first scrimmage, which was before spring break, I thought they were really dominant. I was starting to worry about the defensive line. They were pushing those guys around. Now, here's what happens in the spring. So you're the D-line. You're supposed to be better this year. You get pushed around in the first scrimmage, and what happens? Your coaches are going to be all over you. And then you got spring break to walk around and go, man, we got to do something better. So what happens? They come back in this first scrimmage after the spring break, and they look dominant. The offensive line doesn't look as good, although, again, I continue to say the run blocking is very good. They had some big runs in that game, some long runs. And the quarterback scrambled some for good yardage. So the run blocking was good. Pass blocking, it's hard to tell because it looks like to me maybe they don't have enough receivers. Like you got two really good receivers that we know. You know, we know there's two guys out there. Mike Woods, you know, we saw what he did in the scrimmage. He had a 75-yard touchdown catch that was called back. So they got a couple of good receivers, but maybe these guys aren't getting open quickly enough. Maybe it's the quarterbacks not recognizing soon enough. And you can't stand back there and pass block all day long. So the pass blocking looked okay to me in this scrimmage, but the quarterbacks were running around all the time because eventually they were getting to them. And again, I think some of it was the more aggressive defense. So, you know, I think the offensive line is going to be, with Sam Pittman here, they are going to continue to get better. They're going to get bigger and better. And their best offensive lineman, Tyquise Crawford, who is a transfer and is a sophomore, I don't know what's going on with him. We saw him again. He wasn't in the first scrimmage. He was standing around with a jersey on and some pants, but not a football uniform. And so he may be slightly injured, I don't know. But when you stick him in there, I've seen video of him in a practice where he just took a defensive end and just threw the guy. So we want to see this guy. Sam Pittman, put him out there unless he's hurt. We want to see him.
More Tyquise Crawford. Okay.
See him.
Jumpty wants to know, why do you think Desi Sills is so upset at the current coaching staff and fan base? He has made several comments expressing his frustration, including laughing at a post made by the Hog Pod where Muss stated Desi would always be family.
Well, I don't know Desi, and he hasn't talked to me, so I don't know. I'm assuming that if you've had a big role on this team, and look, his best year is maybe his freshman year, so he has a decreasing role. And then what happens? J.D. Notte comes in here and is sixth man of the year in the SEC. That takes away a lot of your playing time. But let's get honest. We all saw that when Desi came in, he was inconsistent. He had some good games. We also had some games where he wasn't scoring. So that's on him. But I understand the frustration. So clearly at the end of the year, when I guess this, I don't know, tweet or whatever it was with Musselman came out where he said, we'll always consider him family, he was indignant about it. What do you mean family? You didn't do this for me. Here's the thing. You're going to be mad if that happens, if you believe in yourself. I understand that. Most guys don't go that far. They just go, okay, I'm in the portal, I'm gone. But he just chose not to do that. But here's the interesting part. He's not going to get any sympathy on that with Arkansas fans because Musselman took this team to the Elite Eight. You think they're going to worry about a player being mad about it? No, they're not. So here's the thing. What you do as a player is you find the right place, you transfer to a place where you're going to play, and you just move on. I mean, look at Jalen Tate. Look at Justin Smith. Here's two guys that did what Desi Sills is now doing. They transferred. And what did they both say after that last game against Baylor? They said, coming here was the best thing we did. Coach Musselman changed us. So Desi Sills needs to go somewhere and find a place where there's a coach that will change him, and then he can say that.
I think Devo Davis and his emergence had a lot to do with taking some of Desi's minutes, and to play a little in Desi's defense, because I'm not trying to pick sides, but you think about a kid from Arkansas, from Jonesboro, who was a big part of that class with Isaiah Joe and Ethan Henderson and Reggie Chaney and all those guys that came in. I feel like Desi desperately wanted to be the guy at Arkansas. This was his home state school, so maybe his feelings are hurt a little bit, you know. And so you get emotional on Twitter because you really wanted to be the guy at Arkansas.
And he was the only starter coming back. And then he ended up in a reduced role. Look, college athletics is a tough world. It's a tough world. you need to be aware of that. I don't care who you are, how much you wanted to play somewhere.
Sure.
It's because life is like that. Life is a big boy world. You may want a job. I've always wanted to work for these people, and they don't ever hire you, and you end up somewhere else. And you have to do what you have to do. It always doesn't work out. But to me, the best thing is, if you're mad and you're going to enter the portal, be very careful.
Can't get emotional on social media.
Right. Be very careful and go to a place that will use you so that you can finish your career on top.
And I think, you know, Gabe Osaboin going to West Virginia is a great example. He played a lot, was a big part of that team, especially defensively. And then, of course, you had Reggie Chaney, who played a role at Houston, and we saw Houston go to the Final Four. So, again, there are examples of guys who have left Arkansas and been able to be successful, and I'm sure Desi will do the same. But, yeah, right now it's a little fresh. Wound's a little fresh.
I totally understand him being angry. If you believe in yourself and you got a little feistiness about you, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't even think this is a big deal to be, because I think most people understand it. He just kind of got mad, and but he's got a. The thing I would continue to emphasize is be smart when you decide where you're going next.
Yep. All right. The Bionic Pig asks, is there a possibility of Arkansas resuming its basketball series with Memphis after an 18-year hiatus, or will the Memphis AD demand a football game also? Has it really been that long?
I guess. I didn't look.
Oh, wow.
It's been a while. Look, it was a really big deal under Nolan.
Yeah.
Because Nolan, that was a big high school basketball market at the time, and it was a place where you could go over and get good players, but close enough that, hey, they're going to play here because they're close to home and they know about Arkansas. It worked really well for Nolan. The situation is totally different these days for Musselman. For one thing, AAU basketball in Arkansas, which ties into obviously the high school, it's much better than it was in those days. Arkansas is one of the better states in the country in terms of per capita cranking out
basketball talent,
Division I talent that can play at a high level. And we saw Musselman come in his first recruiting effort and just clean up. He got the top 4 guys in the state. That was the issue with Mike Anderson. It wasn't that he couldn't coach, he kept losing the best players in the state. Well, I guess what I'm saying is Eric Musselman doesn't need Memphis. I mean, if they want to play Arkansas and they indicate that they want to, I'm sure he would do it. But I don't think he's going to go to them and say, would you please play us? He's got other options. And then there's this new thing that we're all adjusting to, which is in-state schools. We never had that before. So they're going to give a priority in the non-conference part to playing some of these schools like Arkansas State, Arkansas Little Rock, or whatever, because that's the new thing. So and then, you know, even though Musselman got criticized for his non-conference schedule, everybody said it was weak. We now know it wasn't. So he's going to schedule tough teams, and he can do that. I just don't think it has to be Memphis. If it is, that's great, but I don't know of anything that they're going to bring it back.
I briefly remember when Mike was still here and Tubby Smith was at Memphis, they had scheduled something, and then once I think Tubby Smith left Memphis and Mike Anderson eventually left Arkansas, it dissolved. But it was on the books because Mike and Tubby were friends, but then it dissolved again.
I don't see Razorback fans pumped up about that. I don't think they feel like they have to prove anything to Memphis, you know?
That's true. That's true. And like you mentioned, you don't need that recruiting. You obviously want to get kids out of Memphis. It's a recruiting hotbed, but you don't. Yeah. It's not pertinent.
I see him recruiting everywhere, and especially the portal.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. Okay. Superhog 1959 says, I have 3 areas of concern with the upcoming football season. 1, the QB play. 2, defensive line play in depth. 3, special teams. What have you seen so far, and what do you think of these areas? Okay,
let's talk about quarterback play. Kind of hard to evaluate because the spring is a weird thing. When one thing looks good in your spring, the other thing doesn't, or whatever. I start with KJ Jefferson because if he's not the starter this fall, they've got problems anyway, and they may have problems if he is the starter because he's got to look better than he does right now. That no reason to panic. There's still some time in the spring, and then he's got time all summer to work on stuff, and then in the fall. Right now, he just looks inconsistent. He had this 75-yard bomb to Mike Woods, and it was a beautiful pass, great pass route. It just got wiped out by somebody that was in it downfield when they shouldn't have been. So that's not his fault. He did that well, and he also threw a touchdown pass in the goal line thing, a short touchdown pass. So it wasn't like he didn't do anything. I think he was a little better than 50% on his passes. He didn't throw that much. He had under 100 yards in completions, but he would have had way over that if you'd thrown the 75 in there. They're playing a lot of guys. You know, it's not like he's just out there all the time. He has to give way to the 2s and 3s and whatever. So his scrimmage wasn't terrible. It just wasn't anything where you went, whoa, boy, that's really good. I've seen some stuff from Malik Hornsby in terms of running the ball. He's very quick, and he had some nice runs. But his passing is not what it needs to be. Now, that brings up Lucas Coley, and everybody thinks I'm the charter member of the Lucas Coley fan club. I've just seen him in 2 scrimmages now, and he's intriguing to me. I've always been that way. The first time I saw Clint Sterner, I went, I like that guy. You know, you identify certain people even as a freshman, and there's things about him you like that you see. And he looks like a really promising run/pass quarterback because he can run, but he also is very efficient when he throws the ball. It looks like to me when I'm watching him, he's reading the defenses better than the other quarterbacks. I think he was maybe 4 of 6 passing, which means he didn't throw a lot, but he was really efficient. The problem is he's working with the 3s. I want to see him with the 2s. I'd like to see him with the 1s, you know. That's probably not going to happen right now because he's 17 years old, early enrollee. They're just bringing him along slowly. But by this fall, you may see him some. I really believe that. I like him. So that's the quarterback. What were the others? Other areas?
Here we go. Defensive line, which you kind of touched on already.
They're looking better.
And then special teams, which everyone wants to know about.
Special teams. First of all, kickoff returns and punt returns, what are you going to say? They don't tackle. So how do you know? They just they do this, and then the guy doesn't matter where the ball goes. They kick the ball, but then somebody throws it in the guy's hands, and he takes off running.
It's not
and everybody's
real.
touching and blowing whistles. You can't tell anything from that. So I can't give you an evaluation of that. The punts. Punting was okay. They were averaging, I don't know, 30, 38, 39, 40 yards on punts. It wasn't anything amazing, but it wasn't bad either. The kickoff, Calvaruso, what's his name? Vito?
Yeah, Vito Calvaruso.
He looks good kicking the ball off. I mean, he was booming it, so that's good.
Yeah.
Their field goal kicker, they got this 5-star kid, high school kid that came in early, 5-star.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about him. He's got a strong leg. Got a strong leg. But he just missed.
The Oklahoma kid, Cameron Little?
He just missed everything. He just kicking right, kicking left. He just wasn't accurate. In the old days, and I'm part of the old days, even though I'm still here in the new days, I can remember a time when coaches would tell you, Ken Turner, who was Arkansas's longtime special teams coach and really was he was good working with the field goal kickers. He always told me, he said, you don't want to bring a kid in and make him kick as a true freshman. They're just not ready. So they always tried to have an upperclassman. And even if a guy sat 2 years, that was even better. Well, now they don't look at it that way. I think this kid will be fine. I just think he's a little nervous right now. Yeah. But they've got this guy, Matthew Phillips, who's been around. This is like his 3rd year. I think he's a junior. And he boomed some field goals into a stiff win, 47 yards, something in that range. And he kept a couple of 3 of them. So I'd say he has the edge right now. And so overall, special teams, I didn't see anything that was bad. But you're not, the problems we saw, which are, you know, punt coverage and kickoff coverages and things like that, or dropped when you're punting the ball, getting it blocked and all of that, there's no way to know right now if that's improved.
Yeah, it's the spring. We got a lot of time. Eddie Lynn wants to know, what is the biggest surprise of the baseball season so far?
That's Kevin Copps. That's Kevin Copps. Kevin Copps was never his best year was his freshman year before this year, and I think his ERA was a little over 3. But he went up, and then he had Tommy John surgery, and I think his ERA last year, I may have it here somewhere, it was up there. It was like +8. And Jason Carroll and I weren't expecting a lot out of him. And then when he started doing this stuff, we were like, what's going on? Well, He's the best pitcher on this team. I'm telling you, it's not even close. He's 4-0 in 13 appearances, .82 ERA. He's given up 12 hits in 22 innings with 40 strikeouts. I mean, some of these teams can't hit him.
Yeah.
I mean, they're swinging at stuff that's on the ground. He's got them all flummoxed. He pitched in all 3 of those Auburn games. I think they'd have lost the series without him. He faced 17 batters in those 3 games, 11 strikeouts, gave up just 2 hits and no runs.
I saw something funny after the first Auburn game, or the second Auburn game. It was like some Auburn fan on Twitter. Someone had tweeted an Auburn fan overhearing him say, "Well, at least he's probably not going to be able to pitch the rest of the weekend." And then
he did.
Then he did. They saw him all 3 times.
So why is he so much better? Well, Jason Carroll said a few minutes ago, we were talking about this, and he said, well, you know, he's finally recovered from that Tommy John surgery. And it's been 2 years. Maybe last year was, you know, not enough time. Whatever it is, if he keeps pitching like this, he's going to make a lot of money in Major League Baseball, because right now he's the best college pitcher I've seen in a long time. I mean, guys are just flummoxed by him.
It's pretty fun to watch him, especially as a redshirt senior. He's been through a lot.
I put up a tweet where I, you know, the old Superman, Chris, what was his name? Chris somebody. The old one, not the new Superman, the first one in the Christopher Reeves. He's pulling off his shirt. And I said, what did I say? Something about, in case you don't know this, Kevin Copps was born on a planet orbiting a red star, because that's what Superman supposedly gave him his powers, because Krypton was orbiting a red star. And
that's funny.
So that's Kevin Copps is Superman.
There he is right now for this Arkansas team for sure. All right, Arkansas Redneck says Arkansas now dropped a game in each of the last 2 weekends to the bottom 2 teams in the SEC West. Is that a cause for concern? Because everyone's got to jump on the panic button.
Well, it would be a cause for concern if they lost the series.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, when you twice lose the first game and come back and win the series, that's not easy to do. And let's talk about Auburn and Alabama, because what's happened here, and I don't know how many people have noticed this, the SEC West was always tough, but there was usually a team or 2 at the bottom that you could beat. These 2 teams are better than you think. They can both hit. Auburn's got some home run hitters on that team. They were powdering the ball. And their pitching is not terrible. It's not great. They don't have a whole lot of depth, either one of those teams, but they've got some good pitching. They can hit the ball. They will be a factor in beating some other teams from here on out. So the fact that Auburn was 0-6 going into this series doesn't mean a whole lot to me, because I don't think they're going to have a lot of runs like that. They're just better than that. The whole conference is tough. So, you know, you look at Arkansas, they're 7-2 right now. They're tied for the first place in the SEC West. And I don't know how you do much better than that at this point.
It's also baseball. Like,
baseball is different from game to game.
You're going to lose games in baseball. No need to hit the panic button. All right. John Michael says the baseball team is no longer #1. What is your biggest... Y'all are funny. Y'all are funny. They're not #1, Mike. What's going on? What's wrong? What's break? They're #2. This is unfair.
Well, they still are #1 in Baseball America. They've been there for like 6 weeks. That's hard to do.
Oh, man.
So in that one poll, they're still #1. I think they're #2 in other polls. Here's an interesting stat. They're actually have a better record against top 10 teams than they do top 20 teams. That's pretty weird. But it goes in line with something I think I've observed. They play better against better teams. That's part of what happened, I think, in those 2 series, Auburn, Alabama, is they're just more focused when they're going to go to Mississippi State and play a #3 team. Now we'll find out this weekend, because they're playing a #3 team again in Ole Miss. But you know, here's another thing that's just really weird. There's no question they played the toughest record in college, and they've got the #2 RPI behind Villanova, who's played nobody. I don't even know how that happens. I'd like to know the formula for that stuff. But my point is, this team has done all this stuff against a tough schedule. What drives you nuts, if you're a fan, I'm sure, is the inconsistency of what they do. For instance, the hitting. I mean, They score 20 runs in one game, and the next game they can't seem to get any hits. It's that inconsistency that may come back to bite them at some point. But that's the only criticism I would have.
Yeah, and right now the #1 team over all the polls but Baseball America is Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt's got a pitcher named Kumar Rocker and a kid with last name Leiter, and they're rolling right now. So,
well, I mean, for instance, Arkansas's hitting.
You can't just sit here and criticize Arkansas for what they're not doing.
Well, if you say your concern is hitting, and it has been for me, but then I look here and Ole Miss is batting .279 as a team in Arkansas .280. So come on.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about pitching. Well, their ERA is I think Arkansas is about 3.8 and Ole Miss like 3.2 or something. So that's better. You look at the starting pitchers, the presumed starting pitchers for Ole Miss. It's more like a 3.0 with their presumed starters. Arkansas, there's apparently going to be a change. Paulette is, I guess, he's back in on Saturday, and Vermillion now has moved to the bullpen. But I think if you figure out the ERA of those three guys, which would be
Paulette, Lockhart, and Wicklander.
And Wicklander, that would be somewhere around 3.4.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss is, those three starters are 3.0. What does that mean? It means, I guess, if things go the way according to those numbers, you just would need to hit better than Ole Miss. And there is I want to point this out, just going into that series. The big difference between Ole Miss at the plate and Arkansas is home runs. Arkansas got it here somewhere, wrote it down. It's something like 40-something home runs to 30.
Yeah.
So Arkansas is a much better.
Arkansas was second in the country in home runs heading into the weekend last week, behind LSU.
Then they didn't hit a lot. And LSU hits a lot of home runs.
I don't know where they are now, but that's where they are. So, like, home run hitting's not a problem. I guess my whole point is, like, they're still the #2 team in the country.
Yeah.
Let's rest easy. Okay, Pat Boat wants to know, outside of Jerry Jones, who has been the most successful athlete business-wise, and outside of Jerry Jones, who has been the most successful athlete business-wise, and what was the business?
Well, I'm not a business expert, so I'm just going to take a stab at this. I'm going to say Jerry Jones, national championship teammate, Jim Lindsay.
Yeah.
Because I know a little bit about Jim Lindsay. Lindsay, real estate, property management, apartments, whatever the various divisions of that. And this has been several years ago, but it was, I think it was estimated it's worth $500 million. Now that's not Jerry money, but that's more money than I think you're going to make if you're, I was going to say Senator Bozeman, because he was a successful optometrist, and every time a senator gets to Washington, they get money somehow. But I don't think you're getting that kind of money. You know, there's been other Razorbacks that have been successful in business, but I don't think like Jim Lindsay. And here's an interesting story about him. When he was still in college, but after he got his bonus money his senior year from the Vikings, I think, he's always been kind of a businessman, even when he was in college, and he bought this piece of property on College Avenue. And this was at a time when College Avenue is not anything like it is now, but he knew what that was worth, what he paid for it. And then there was a piece of property off of what then was Old 71 Business between Fayetteville and Springdale, and it was off to the west, and it was a hill area, and it was hilly, and I don't think it was very valuable property because people like to build on kind of flat, and this was kind of a hilly area. Well, he looked at the price on it was 160 acres. And he looked at the price and went, whoa, that's a much better deal than what I just bought on this. I could buy that, sit on it, and if the city continues to grow in that direction, I could probably make a big profit. So he bought it for a song. And then he went into the NFL, and he held on to it all the way to 1971 when he retired. And then this is where it comes into play. He retires from pro football, comes back to Fayetteville, and almost as soon as he gets back here, this company is looking to build a mall, and that's the ideal location for the mall, and guess who owns it? He does. So he made a buttload of money off that land. Well, then he took that land and he started buying more real estate, because in the early 70s, that's when Northwest Arkansas was starting to take off, especially Springdale and Fayetteville. It was later up in Benton County. But he made the statement one time that you could put up a map of Fayetteville, Springdale, put up the area, and you could put it up on a wall like a dartboard, and you could just throw that dart and hit a spot on the map and buy whatever that property was, and you could probably hold on to it for a year or two and make double your money. That's the way everything was going back then. So he got into real estate, started buying real estate. They started building subdivisions on land that he knew or he owned, and then he started buying up apartments, and then he started building it. He came up with the idea, I'll just get my own construction company and just build a bunch of apartments. So he could build them for less money because he owned the construction company, and people are moving into apartments. And this all happened about the time Tyson was bringing people in to work. So he really took advantage of all that situation and built this company up. But he's a huge Razorback fan, and he was always very supportive and was there with money and effort and everything. I think his two sons run that company now. But he's probably the most successful other than Jerry. If there's another one out there, you can let me know and I'll talk about that person.
There you go. All right. Atlanta Porker says, I recently saw a highlight video from the 1971 Arkansas versus Texas game that showed the impressive arm of Joe Ferguson. You love Joe Ferguson.
I do.
In your years of covering the Hogs, which QB exhibited the strongest arms? Well,
first of all,
Joe. You love Joe.
Let me say that I actually saw that game. It was on TV. I was at Fort Benning, Georgia. I was in the Army. I was in the barracks. And it was on TV, and Arkansas beat Texas in Little Rock in the rain. And he was very impressive. Other quarterbacks, my goodness. I wrote some down because my memory's getting bad.
You need this?
No, I wrote some down.
All right.
Let's go with last year's quarterback, Felipe Franks. Don't you think he had a really strong arm? He was accurate. Strong arm, threw some bombs, you know, was accurate doing it. So I'd go with him right off the bat. That's fresh in everybody's mind. I always thought Matt Jones had a stronger arm than people thought. He was known as a running quarterback, and he was kind of inaccurate. Matt had a slight shoulder separation that he never got repaired. And the story I always got was they were worried that if they repaired it and made it too tight, he wouldn't be able to throw it all. So he just left it the way it was. But he threw some amazing touchdown passes and showed some arm strength. He was just maybe inconsistent. Clint Sterner, you know, he could throw the football. He could throw the deep ball, and he could throw it accurately. And Brad Taylor, he's a guy back in the 80s that an in-state kid from Dardanelle, I think, somewhere. Oh, not Dardanelle. I'm going brain dead here. But anyway, he was an in-state kid, and he had a strong arm. And then, don't laugh, because I'm telling you, he shocked me his junior year. Quinn Grovey. He was known as an option quarterback, but that year under Hatfield, he really turned into a passer, and he goes up against that run and shoot at Houston that Houston had in a game in Little Rock, and he threw for like 400 and something yards and showed a strong arm and all that. The next year, he didn't have much of an offensive line, didn't get much of a chance to throw the ball. But I think Grovey is in there, maybe later in his career.
I need to go back and watch some Quinn Grovey football
he could throw
games.
it.
All right. Viva La Ham wants to know any idea on when we will hear about Coach Muss's extension raise and hopefully huge buyout.
Jason Carroll thinks that he's so busy recruiting that he's not worried about contract thing right now. I think what's going on is some good old-fashioned horse trading between Hunter Yurachek and Musselman's agent. I think they're sitting there talking money, you know, and Yurachek's doing what he should do. He's trying to make sure he doesn't just pay more than he has to, but whatever he needs to pay. Musselman has already come out, and people that know him know this. He's going to stay, and they're going to pay him. He's not going to, you know, make the same money that he is now, which he's one of the lowest paid coaches in the SEC. It's going to go up. But I don't think he's all about money either. So I'm not worried about the fact that they haven't done it yet. I think they'll get around to it.
All right. Lanny says Chris Beard was on Texas Tech staff under Bobby Knight and said he was at home to stay when he got hired as their head coach. Now he's gone to Texas. Chris Beard and loyalty don't go hand in hand, but whatever. Muss says he loves it here. Are there any concerns he will surprise us and take off?
Well, I just kind of answered that. No, I don't think so. But there is an interesting story to this. When this coaching search was going on that eventually led to Musselman, that was the same year Chris Beard was taking Texas Tech to the championship game. And there were some boosters that really wanted Hunter Yurachek to wait. Beard had been here in Arkansas. There was some feeling, well, he might come back here. You know, we should look at him. He's really rising coach in the coaching profession. So Jason Carroll's standing right next to me that day after the press conference is over, and we asked Hunter Yurachek about that. Did you talk to him? Did he just blow Arkansas off? What happened? He said, look, I never did. He said, here was my thinking. He's just gone to Texas Tech. If I offer him this job and he takes it, what does that mean? It means he's just a hired gun. He would go to a place, stay a year, 2 years, and go. He said, I didn't want anybody like that. I wanted a guy that didn't want just a better job. I wanted a guy that wanted to come here. Now, we all know the story of what happened, and it involved Connor Nolan's dad, who was living in Nevada at the time, and Musselman contacted, because they were friends, they knew each other, and Eric Musselman said to him, can you get word, I'm not just going to pick up the phone and call, but can you get word to the AD at Arkansas that I want to talk to him about that job? And when Hunter Yurachek heard that, he went, whoa, he started looking at his record, and he went, now this is a guy that might really, because he contacted us. And when he called him, he said, the first time I talked to him on the phone, I knew he was what we wanted, because he wanted to be here badly. His wife has relatives here. There's that story we always tell about the day that he had his press conference, and we were all over there doing all these live shots, and finally we were tired and finished, and we all headed back over here, and we're right out here on the street, just a block east of the university, or east of the university campus, and we're driving along, and who do we see? Eric Musselman, his wife,
Mariah,
his daughter.
Danielle,
they're walking down just looking at everything and pointing like, whoa, look where we live now. And we thought, wow, okay, he likes it here. And I think he does. And
I just don't think it's fair to really compare Musselman to Chris Beard. And this is someone who covered Chris Beard when he was at McMurray in Abilene.
Okay.
He was there in Abilene, then he goes to Angelo State. He's at McMurray for a year, goes to Angelo State for a year or two, then goes to Little Rock, gets hired by UNLV, is there for like a day. Then Texas Tech calls him, so he leaves UNLV, says, never mind, I changed my mind, I'm going to go to Tech. He says he's really happy at Tech, he's never going to leave. He was an assistant there under Bobby Knight and Billy Gillespie. And then he goes and takes the Texas job. Now, he's a Texas alum, but my point is there's not a whole lot of loyalty with Chris Beard, and I feel like there's a lot of loyalty with Eric Musselman, and I don't think it's fair to compare the two.
Let me add a little bit to that story, because everybody knows I grew up out there, and I know a lot of people that still live out there who are Texas Tech fans. I tried to warn them. I would talk to some of my friends and say, I don't know this guy's staying. If that Texas job opens, I've heard he's gone, and they're going, no way, no way. He says he loves it here. My buddy told me a couple of weeks ago before this happened, he said, do you understand what kind of relationship he has with the people around here? He said, businessmen are just offering him stuff all the time. He's got this endorsement and that endorsement. And everywhere he goes, people just give him food and give him things. They love him. And you have to understand, and this is something that Arkansas fans do not know, the panhandle of Texas is a huge high school basketball area. My dad was a newspaper man, a weekly newspaper man, and he would load up the car on the night of basketball games, whether it was midweek or weekend, and we'd pile in that car and we'd go to these little gyms all over the place, and they were always full. And that translated to Texas Tech, because they built a 10,000-seat Coliseum in the mid-50s at a time when the University of Texas was playing in a 4,000-seat gym. I can't remember what Barnhill was at that time, but most of those basketball facilities in the mid-50s were 4,000 or 5,000, small venues. Texas Tech had a 10,000-seat Coliseum. They had a municipal auditorium next to it that held 3,000 people. They had so many people that wanted to go to those games, they would have to set up a video screen, and the overflow, they would go in there and watch the game. So they had crowds of 13,000. Just 3,000 of them couldn't be in the arena. That's how big a basketball school it is. Now, Chris Beard should know that. Bobby Knight talked about what a great thing it was to go there and see that happen. He was amazed at what a basketball school it was. So here's Chris Beard, he knows this. He's going to go to Texas now. I know he's got ties to Texas, but here's what Texas does. First time you have a bad year,
that's a tough job.
They're just going to go, you know, they're tearing down that 15,000-seat Superdome because they can't fill it up. They were drawing 4,000 and 5,000 with Shaka Smart. Now, assuming Chris Beard gets it going, they'll have bigger crowds. They're not going to draw 15,000. And here's the last thing my buddy, one of them told me last night, because we're on the phone, because he was in shock for 2 days. Called him back to make sure he was okay. He says, I'm mad. We're mad now.
Dude's
you
mad.
wouldn't believe what's going on. I watched Red Raider talk on TV. All these people calling in. He's going to play hell coming in here from now on. Every time he brings Texas into whatever that is, Spirit Arena or whatever, he said, there's going to be 15,000 people booing him from the minute he walks in the door till the game's over. And we'll boo him when out in the parking lot when he gets back on the bus to leave. So it's not Arkansas's deal, but it's just kind of funny because I'm with you. I don't like these hired guns. I believe when you tell somebody you're there, you want to be there, don't just jump at the first opportunity, even if it's a place where you used to coach.
Yeah, and I get, like, Shaka saw the writing on the wall, and he had a ranked team. I get they lost to Abilene Christian in the first round,
Look
but
at Mac Brown, he had it going there, and
well,
then
look, they said see you later to Rick Barnes, and he's done pretty well at Tennessee.
What was that all about? They went deep into the NCAA tournament when Rick Barnes was there.
Mac Brown, they said see you later, Rick Barnes, see you later,
we
Charlie
don't like
Strong,
the Longhorns. We don't like Longhorns.
Man, I tell you, they are moody down there in Austin.
Well,
so have fun with that.
They are clueless. They don't know what's good.
Hey, you know what? Good for them. They can just keep spinning their wheels.
There's no way Eric Musselman gets out of bed tomorrow and announces to us that he's going to LSU. Bye, I'm going to LSU. See ya.
Yeah, no,
it's not going to happen.
Not at all. Absolutely not. All right, that's going to do it for Ask Mike this week. If you have any questions for Mike, hold off. I'm kidding. He wants all the questions, so just head on over to Hogville and ask away. We'll see you next week.